Hi, folks. This is Abel James, and thanks so much for listening to the Fat Burning Man Show, where we talk about real food and real results. Today's episode of the show is with another podcaster, Mr. Ben Coomber, and he's also a performance nutritionist, coach, writer, and host of the Ben Coomber Radio Show. So it's a pleasure to talk to him. He's a former actor with a really interesting story. He knows what it's like to be overweight and what it's like to be in great shape. So he has a lot of insight to share with you. Before we get to the show, I have a pretty cool announcement about something I've been working on the past few months. I'm going to be presenting a 2-day course for Creative Live. If you haven't heard of them, it's a super cool platform for online education, and past instructors have been really interesting, cutting edge people like Tim Ferriss, Derek Halpern, Noah Kagan, and everything from photography to software to business and now lifestyle as well. So the course is going to be August 26th and 27th, and it's totally free to watch for the 2 days that I'm presenting live anywhere in the world. If you'd like to learn more about that course and what I'm presenting, a quick a quick introduction to what I'll be talking about is, no surprise, fat burning, but specifically intermittent fasting and some other advanced strategies when it comes to training, as well as lifestyle issues and the mental game and that sort of thing. So if you're interested in learning more about that, just head on over to fatburningman.com/creative live. That's all one word, creative live. So really excited about that. I hope to see a lot of you there. And another quick announcement, we have just a couple spots left if you'd like to join me live in studio, and we'll fly you out there to San Francisco where we're filming that 2-day course. So it's coming right up. So if you'd like to apply, go to the same page. It's fatburningman.com/creative live. I'm really looking forward to seeing you guys there. I'm stoked for this. All right, so onto the show with Ben. This is a really fun one. He's a super interesting guy. He's a trainer who has a lot more insight than a lot of other trainers who I've met. We're going to be talking about sneaky tips from an actor to be a more effective personal trainer, what it feels like to be fat, and why losing weight might actually make you feel like less of a man. Why getting a terrific body doesn't necessarily make you happy, and tons more. All right, let's go hang out with Ben. All right, folks, today I'm excited to be here with Ben Coomber, who's a performance nutritionist, coach, writer, and host of the Ben Coomber Radio Show, another #1 rated health podcast on iTunes in the UK across the pond. Stoked to have you on, Ben.
Yeah, awesome to be on. Although you've just sent me this link to rate my show, and this woman's picked me off the post today, so I'm sitting here crying in my breakfast English tea.
Oh, I'm only #2 in the UK today. It's a bad day.
Tomorrow it'll be okay.
Well, cool. So one of the things that I love about your story, aside from the fact that you popped out of nowhere and started dominating the charts in the UK, is that you weren't always totally ripped or strong or anything like that. You don't have, the gift of perfect genetics that's always had you at the point of being healthy and a six-pack and that sort of thing. In fact, it was quite the opposite. So I'd love to hear you explain how you came to be where you are today.
Yeah, I mean, to kind of segue slightly, I think that makes the best coaches. When I teach in public, I always say to people, look, the only reason I'm here is because I've got a journey. Mm-hmm. I haven't just got this knowledge. I've had to be there. I can understand where people are coming from with the journey to health and wellness and performance and muscle and fat loss and all these different things. So, So from the age of the age of 8 to 18, I was an actor. The whole life, I pranced around in tights and pretended to be trees and did singing when I didn't want to and all that kind of stuff. And I got to 18, I was destined to be an actor on the big stage. I always wanted to be in theatre, and my parents had put away a good sum of money for my house sale for me to go to drama school. And when I left school, I reached... I was assessing how I would reach success in my industry, and I sort of stood there and looked at myself as an obese teenager. I was about 16 stone at the time, and I would say my natural bony weight at the time was about 10.5 stone if I was kind of leanish. Yeah. And I looked at myself and I said, fat actors don't get work. Like, I need to do something about this. So I went on a health kick. I started running. I started doing what the government tells us to do, eat whole grains, a bit of this, bit of that, not too much fat. And after 5 months, I'd lost 5 pounds. And obviously I was devastated. I was like hands in head, like, what am I going to do? Anyway, cut a long story short, I've got a younger brother. As standard material, I tease him all the time. And we're in the kitchen one day arguing, and I was calling him a fat so-and-so and teasing him and poking him. And he just lashed back. He said, you know what? You're not so perfect yourself. And, he lashed out, and I was stunned. And anyway, we set each other this challenge. He said, I bet you can't lose 2 stone in 2 months. And obviously at that point, I was like, oh my God, how am I going to lose all this weight? I only have enough knowledge to lose 5 pounds in 5 months.
Yeah.
Went to a gym. I had to rethink my strategy. So I went to a new gym, and I was just really fortunate to fall in the hands of a personal trainer called Ben Gray, who had more than 2 brain cells. And he said, hey, read this book, How to Eat, Move and Be Healthy by Paul Chek. So for anyone listening, I think that's a superb book. Yeah. It really grounds people in health, movement, vitality, well-being, sleep. And I read this book, and I was like, wow. This is information I've never heard. Brilliant. So I started to apply it, and I lost about 5 stone in 6 months. Wow. So it literally just peeled off me the fat. And at that point, this happens with everyone. You start to lose weight, and it's really dramatic, and you get into it. You get into fitness. You become like a bit of a junkie. And I just went on this journey. I was like, I want to know more. I want to be able to train myself better. And at that point, I was in a job, employment, and I was saving up to go traveling. I went traveling, I found myself and had all these eureka moments. And I came back, and I was like, do you know what? I'm not going to be an actor anymore. I want to do something nutrition related. I'm going to train to become a trainer. Yeah. And this money that I had put away, that's what I did. I invested it in my education. I went out to the Czech Institute and studied under Paul Chek personally. I traveled to Scandinavia, some other cool places. So, I was fortunate enough that I could fast track myself in the industry. And to this day, I've never looked back.
That's brilliant. I love that story. It's interesting, too, that you come from a background of acting. I wonder how that translates to you being, a terrific speaker and someone who gives a compelling show that people would listen to. And it's a really cool talent for communication when you do have not just that knowledge, but like you said, that way of communicating your journey.
Yeah, definitely. But what I want people to realize is it doesn't mean that I'm naturally a good speaker or that I'm confident in my own skin. So because, I was an obese teenager, and when you're an actor, you're brilliant at playing a character. So I was brilliant at standing there playing whatever character it was, whether it was funny, sad, happy, and you're not judged because you're playing a character. And then as soon as I lost weight and I became this individual, I had to become happy as myself as an individual, and I wasn't happy. So, I remember when I first became a personal trainer when I was about 20 years old, and I was just like a skinny, fat personal trainer. And, I put up a fairly good facade, but over the years I looked at myself and I was like, I'm not happy. I'm not confident. I can't stand there and say that I'm a brilliant trainer when I don't look like, sort of a men's cover model or even remotely close to it, which, as a personal trainer, I do think you have to look a certain amount like the part.
Sure.
So I think it wasn't till I became really, really, really comfortable with my knowledge as a professional. Like, Abel, if you asked me right now any question, I feel I could answer it or have a good stab at it. Yeah. And once I got to that point, and the point where I was physically happy, so I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, you know what, Ben, you're in good shape. You've got a good muscle tone, you're good muscle mass, physically strong. And at that point, a switch clicked in my head, and I was like, I can public speak. And then obviously I added to those kind of skills in terms of actually delivering and responding to people and being a good communicator. But it wasn't until I got to that point where I had this real inner confidence that I said, you know what, I'm going to teach others.
Yeah. And so what you explain when you went from being someone who was obese to someone who was skinny but not happy, I think is something that resonates with a lot of people, because they find that, all they want in this world is to be skinny. That's the one thing. And once they're skinny, all of their problems will be solved, right? And they'll finally be happy. But that's not really what happens. So can you explain how you felt when you got there?
Yeah, well, I probably felt kind of more of a man when I was bigger
Huh.
because you've almost got like a persona, a substance to you,
Sure.
you know. And then when I became skinny, I was just skinny. I mean, people that follow me that listen to this will now laugh at this statement, but I play rugby. So, playing rugby as an individual that is 10.5 stone is really hard work. You're not a man, you're almost a boy.
Yeah.
So I kind of stood there and I was like, I don't feel like a man. I don't feel like a guy. I don't feel strong. I don't feel powerful. And I feel they're all the things that you should feel as a guy. You should feel macho, like an alpha male, like Tarzan swinging through the forest, oh. Um, and to be really happy, I sort of I had to build on that. So being skinny just wasn't enough. That was only really the first step of the journey. And for anyone that knows my blog, one of my most read blog posts on the Body Type Nutrition website is my 8-year journey. So I've got photos of ever since I was 18 right up till now to show people that this is all a process. It's a journey. I'm not some kind of elitist individual that I'm now there and nothing really matters. There's this whole journey that's formed where I've got. And also it proves to people that you'll reach one goal and something else will materialize and then something else will materialize. Like right now, do I stand here and go 100% happy? No, but I'm 95, 96% happy, which, day to day makes me feel really good.
Yeah.
But that little 3, 4, 5% keeps me driven to, get in the gym, play sport, be strong, that kind of stuff.
So what's that 3% right now?
Do you know what? I think it's just always trying to better myself and see what I can do as an individual physically. Definitely in the gym. Like I love being in the gym. I love the aesthetic side of the gym. Like don't get me wrong, I want to be that guy at the gym that can take his shirt off and people go, yeah, not bad. I also want to be able to play my sport and be able to compete physically in my sport.
Yeah.
And then I think, as a performance-minded individual, you're always looking at that kind of, can I be a bit leaner? Can I be a bit bigger, a bit stronger, a bit faster? And that's just hunger for physical perfection.
Yeah.
And perfection is this kind of fictionary thing, but it drives me to be better in both business and in my personal life, really.
What's perfect to you?
I think perfect is probably really satisfying my inner goals. I think perfection needs to come something that is your ideal and not someone else's. I think as a population in general, and Americans are no different to the UK, we're good at comparing ourselves to outside ideals. Like, I would love to look at that celebrity or that person in a magazine. The only thing that you should do every day is be a better version of yourself.
Yeah.
Wake up, 6 a.m., alarm goes off, coffee's on, and all you're going to do is kick ass and become a better version of yourself, which is why I teach this thing about becoming awesome.
Yeah.
Because awesome's like this inner word where you almost want to jump up and high five yourself like, yeah.
Yeah.
And, when I teach in the UK, people think I'm mental because it's very an American thing. Like, yeah, awesome. That slightly cheesy word, but I think it's so brilliantly descriptive on a personal level.
That's so cool. I read something the other day that said you won't have competition until you can clone yourself. And that was like a different way of looking at the same thing. And I thought it was super pithy and awesome.
Yeah.
So you mentioned before that you tried to lose weight by doing what the government told you to do and what 2.5 brain celled personal trainers might have told you to do. What did that look like compared to what you advocate today?
Yeah, wow. So the government, lots of whole grains, relatively low fat, moderate protein intake, get your 5 portions of fruit and vegetables. That's kind of how it's being portrayed in the UK. 2 portions of fish a week. When I read the book, so Paul Chek's How to Eat, Move and Be Healthy, and worked with the trainer to kind of look at various different things, I found out that I was gluten and wheat intolerant. Also not good with cow's dairy as well. So obviously these were huge trigger foods for me. Like as soon as I took these foods out, oh my God, my gut. And at the time, it wasn't just being obese. So I was diagnosed with ADHD, which is attention deficit disorder, eczema. I had gut dysfunction, so IBS, as the doctor would call it. I couldn't really concentrate at school and at university. So further down my journey, I had to learn more to be able to concentrate better. So, it wasn't just a weight factor. It was very much a health factor for me. I didn't sleep brilliantly either. So, I mean, my diet just became really, really natural without these inflammatory foods. So, we know this concept of the paleo diet. And for me, the paleo diet sums up this approach of eat whole, natural, one ingredient foods, regardless of exclusions and stuff. Make it as natural as possible. And I found out that I was useless on carbs as well. I'm just really a carb adverse individual, and my body just loves meat and fat. And these days, I'm kind of a meat and fat monster. Meat, fat, an absolute gazillion vegetables, like as many vegetables as I can fit in. I'll always try and find ways to eat more vegetables because I really do think they're the cornerstone of health. And so when you compare that to what the government's saying, it's completely different.
Yeah,
it's completely different. And my level of health now it's insane in comparison.
So it sounds like the UK and the US are in pretty similar situations. I know that there are some differences. It was fascinating to me. I was just on Facebook a couple of nights ago, and there's a family reunion group that I'm a part of. And my family has, in a really cool way, had reunions at pretty much the same place on the same farm for decades going back. And so I was just poking around, and I saw that it went back. We had pictures from 1965, and then we'd get together every 5 to 10 years and look at what happened along the way. And I compared every decade, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and today. And obviously these people have the same genetics. We're the same family, same people. But you look at the pictures and it is absolutely shocking what's happened over the course of time. It's like the 60s, pretty much. Of course, there were some people who were a little bit pudgy, other people who were rail thin, but the average was just, everyone looked like people. They looked like wartime photos or anyone before everything went sideways. And then in the 70s, you could see people, putting on a little bit of weight, but there are definitely lots of trim people too. Then the 80s, it was just like, boom. The average person had put on 30 to 40 pounds, it looked like, average adult anyway, in these pictures. And I'll be sure to write a blog post about this and make sure that none of the faces can be seen or anything. But yeah, and then you look today and basically starting in around the 80s, just everything went completely wrong. And now what you see as the average person is someone who's really obese. What do you think is causing that both in the US and the UK? Is it the same thing? Is it something cultural, or are we missing something?
I think it's totally the same thing. Like the UK follows the US, in everything it does, a couple of years behind. But we'll come back to that question. The problem that we've got now is that obese is the norm.
Yeah.
So when you're fit and healthy, it's almost like you shouldn't be. So people feel bad about feeling fit, because it's kind of like, it's like when workers or clients take a salad or whatever into lunch, and people are like, oh my God, you're eating a salad again. Like, you're so unnormal. And people now feel bad for being healthy because it's not the norm. And, when you think about it, it's pretty disgusting that, people are demonized for really wanting to actually really look after their health and not being another statistic. Like, I don't want to be a statistic. It says that on my Twitter, Addy, past obesity statistic. And I'm proud of that. Like, I don't want to be part of that number. But I mean, obesity is so multifaceted. Like, when you actually look at the chemistry, I've talked about, the chemistry of obesity with some really good doctors in the UK. And it's stuff that I don't really think about because I look at the kind of the very simplistic nutritional side of it.
Yeah.
But, there's a huge psychology behind it. So people that lack, being happy in their life, and sometimes food is like the only comfort for them in their life, especially if someone's lonesome. But we've got a huge emergence of processed food, and the message is just not helping anyone. The government message is, all this stuff is okay in moderation. And a lot of the time, none of this stuff is okay. Like, it's working your way through a box of Krispy Kremes as long as you've had your 5 portions of fruit and vegetables yesterday.
Yeah.
Like, it's not okay. It's not really a good message. And people will sit there and go, well, it kind of is okay. And I'm like, well, let's look at the results. It's not okay.
Yeah.
And, you'll know, and people that will listening that coach other people know that it's a constant battle. You know, we're trying to fight the message that is in the mainstream, and hopefully over time the message will swing our way to say that actually we're the guys that are right, and it's, you know, the government and various other organizations that are kind of not really working in our favor, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the past 3 or 4 years, for whatever reason, I think a lot of it has to do with the internet and the ability to download multimedia, especially audio and video. It seems like paleo and real food, slow food has just absolutely exploded, at least in the US. But it seemed like for a while anyway, that the UK and Australia, some of the other English speaking countries were following somewhat closely behind. For the UK right now, is it something that's definitely on the upward trend, or does it still feel like a huge battle where not many people know what this stuff is?
No, it's definitely on the up. I think especially in the US, the new trend of gyms like CrossFit and more kind of box-like gyms has very much helped this movement spread, because, you know, people go to gyms and it helps a kind of a knowledgeable movement. And the UK is no different. So as well as commercial gyms that are, you know, the information tends to be fairly poor, there's a lot of, you know, small self startup gyms, you know, places with tracks in them and, you know, Olympic lifting platforms and that kind of stuff. And the knowledge coming out of these small gyms is very, very much better. You know, I meet these people on a daily basis. These are the guys that are coming to my seminars and stuff. And that's really helping spread a nationwide movement, because if there's pockets of these gyms all over the UK, we can start to spread a wider web of message. Yeah. So it's definitely on the up. I mean, if you look at paleo keywords in Google, you know, it's being searched so much, you know, and we in the UK, and it's probably the same in the US, you have your, you know, anti-paleo kind of advocates. Yeah. And, you know, if I was to take a moment to give a bit of a message, I don't really think being anti-paleo is really going to help anyone, because we're trying to spread a universal message, right? We're all trying to say, how about we try and make everyone healthier, try and push or steer everyone in the direction of real foods, buying your meats and vegetables, visiting the market, understanding your foods. And, you know, us wasting energy arguing about whether dairy is paleo or whether chickpeas are inflammatory to the gut and stuff. You know, it's the 2%. Yeah. You know, if we start singing off the same hymn sheet, then we're going to affect more people, and more people are going to be able to get healthier.
That's right. And the crux of the message is that we should all be eating real food, whether, you know, you identify as paleo or not. It's just like paleo has absorbed a lot of these other concepts, and now people who are paleo kind of get that. But people who aren't are just like, well, you're just like trying to act like cavemen and eat nothing but meat all the time. And it's just that's so wrong compared to what most of the people in this movement anyway advocate, which is eat a heck of a lot of vegetables, because they're the cornerstone of health. Yeah. Not grains. Basically, all you're really doing is switching out vegetables for grains, right? You're taking away the grains and going for the greens and most of the non-starchy, colorful vegetables. And then you just kind of like keep the meat there. You know, you eat your fish and your chicken, maybe a bit of beef as well. And it's really not that ridiculous of an idea, but it seems like people are putting it way out here and trying to polarize it.
Yeah, and like somehow it's extreme in some way. It's not extreme. It's only because we're incredibly good at staying within our habits. You know, we're creatures of habit. You know, it's just like, you know, if I got up in the morning and went to the toilet before I cleaned my teeth, and someone else cleaned their teeth before they went to the toilet, they would find it very strange and weird to just change their ways, just purely because it's the subconscious habit. Yeah. So changing from a sandwich to some fish and roasted vegetables or something, it seems like this whole alien idea, because we actually have to stand back and go through a thought process to enable this change to happen. And if people are really in control of their own decisions and really in control of their own life, then it's very easy changes to make, because it's literally a decision. It's like, I'm not going to eat that. I'm going to eat this. I'm going to buy that from the supermarket and prepare this. But people that are led by others and aren't really in control of their own thoughts are obviously going to struggle, because their habits keep them on the straight and narrow, or what they see as the straight and narrow.
Yeah.
So that's where we have this problem with change, because it's it's a huge psychological element. You've got to get over what is going through the back of your mind the whole time, and a lot of the time it could be 99% of the battle with most people.
Yeah. So how do you actually enable that change to happen?
I think it's a process of growth and education. Like in the UK, we have an online nutrition education system, and we coach all our clients online. And we're very much, the growth of our company has been really, really slow. And it's for one reason, because we're all about education. We're all about long-term change. Like if I sold 12-week transformations based on abs and, guns and all this stuff, my business probably would have grown overnight, because people buy into that kind of stuff. But I'm not about that. So for this to happen, people have to be empowered. It's not good enough for me to say, do you know what, Julie, you shouldn't eat that. You should just eat this. I need to tell them why. I need to show them the reaction that this has on their well-being, their health, their sleep, their performance, their gut function, their immunity. And once people connect all these dots, you find reasons to do things right. You're like, no, I'm not going to do that, because that makes me sleep badly and makes me poo through an eye of a needle, and all this kind of stuff. And once people make these connections, they're empowered to keep changing, rather than go, it's easier to just do this.
Yeah. What were those critical connections for you in your own journey?
I mean, obviously weight loss is one. We can't discount that. I wanted to feel good in my own skin. Sleep was a big one, but I think the biggest thing was being really energized. Like people these days don't get, or don't really fully appreciate how good it is, or how good it feels to wake up at 6 a.m. and be bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and have that energy all the way till 9 o'clock at night. Then when you go, oh. And no one ever really feels like that, and they don't get it. And I'm like, if you get your diet spot on, you should feel brilliant. You should feel awesome. So I think that's a very key focus with me when I work with a client, to say, do you know what? If I do one thing and it's next week, I'm going to make you feel good. Yeah. Because when I feel good, that's half the battle done. I'm not bothered about the scales in the first 2 weeks. I just want to make you feel good.
Yeah. How did you used to feel?
I just tired. I would probably have that knee-jerk reaction, like many other people, that, I'm tired, like I need a coffee. Like we don't have a coffee deficiency. It's a deficiency of nutrients and the right balance of macronutrients and sleep and de-stressing. All these things equal fantastic levels of energy. And intolerances. Don't get me wrong, when I cut out the stuff that didn't agree with me, that just took my well-being up another level.
Yeah. And how did you find that out originally? Did you do testing, or was it just an elimination type diet?
Yeah, so, when I was younger, my mum always used to take me to see various practitioners, because, my childhood wasn't plain sailing, or had struggled with weight, various different things. So I'd had testing done in the past. We knew that wheat was a problem and that milk was a problem, but hadn't sort of joined all the pieces together, purely because we weren't educated enough. Like we didn't really know enough. And then when I was 18, I was like, right, well, I already know that wheat and milk are a problem, so I'm going to take them out. And then I got some more testing, and then the person was like, I think these are a problem. So I thought, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to take it all out. I'm going to bring it back in, and if it makes me feel rubbish, I'm just not going to eat it. And that, for me, that was simple enough. And I do that with clients now. I'm like, we're not going to eat this for 30 days. We'll bring it back in. If you feel lousy, don't eat it. If you feel okay, then we'll eat it now and again.
Yeah. And do a lot of people, once they eat that junk food again, or the food that doesn't agree with them, do you find that even though it makes them feel terrible, they still want to do it?
No.
Good.
Not my clients personally, basically because I focus on this theory of let's feel really good. Yeah. And if I make someone feel really good, they don't want to go back to feeling lousy again. Like, if they do, well, I don't know. I wouldn't know how to help.
Yeah. And it's interesting because when you see that happen, you realize that it's when you see someone basically sabotaging something that's working anyway, which I think is happening a lot more as the information is out there and getting easier to find in terms of what's going to help you get lean and healthy. But maybe the coach, like you guys have, that support system isn't there. That's what you start to find is the people
You're
who
already nailing on something, support system. So if someone really does fail, I had a client do this to me last week, and they wrote me an email and sort of said, you know what, this isn't for me, and I'm like, whoa, dude, we're making awesome progress. You're dropping pounds like they're just falling out your pocket.
Yeah.
And I sort of dug deeper, and it always comes down to the same thing, and it's the social environment. And I am very open about talking about this kind of stuff on social media. I'm more than happy to sit down in front of a client and bring up this kind of issue because it's so important. If you've got a spouse that is sabotaging your development, it's very hard. Like if you've got two people that are obese in a relationship and one gets skinny, there's going to be an uproar. The other person's going to feel more self-conscious, feel bad that they're not doing enough. Now we're not going to feel that they're not good enough. So that's a really big problem, and you've got to address that problem, or the spouse is going to go, do you know what? I need to go back to being fat because it's just better for my relationship. Or you might have friends that might go, do you know what? Yeah, Julie, don't worry about that. Coming out and have a pizza and a bottle of wine. And so I'm very open about saying, do you know what? Sometimes you've got to leave some friends behind. You really do. Before that friend, if they really are a friend, they'll turn around and go, do you know what? Actually, what you're doing is a brilliant thing. And, do you know what? I might change a few things and look to lose a little bit of weight and feel better about myself. And it's a big problem, especially in females, in my experience anyway.
Yeah. And what you describe is that friction at the beginning when one person changes and maybe the group that they've been a part of, whether it's family or friends or something else, a group of peers, basically doesn't make that change. You're the outlier all of a sudden, and you're the threat to the status quo. And no one really likes to, hear something, especially something that they think is extreme, working for somebody else. They especially if they haven't looked into that change themselves, they would see it as something, maybe they're starving themselves, right? Or maybe they're, taking these prescription pills and that's why they're really losing the weight, not this crazy diet they're on, or all sorts of other ideas. But what I find is once you push past that initial point of friction and conflict with any group, then it starts to sort itself out. Then it's just, you're the skinny guy who hangs out with the same group that you always used to, and you're just known as that guy, and that's part of your identity all of a sudden. And what often happens after that is other people are just like, well, I kind of respect what you did. I'm going to try that too. What exactly are you eating? Or are you going to the gym? Can I understand what's happening to you? And then you see it kind of like expand throughout the group. Or it just doesn't really work out anymore, and you find that you do need to move on. And you can't just go out and get beer and chicken wings every night like your pals are doing. But it's a really important shift, and it's one that a lot of people don't really realize. It's a problem of success, right? Because that's the best case scenario. You lose a bunch of weight, and then all of a sudden you don't have any friends. So did that happen to you too, in your own journey?
I think it was a bit different for me because when I was at school, I went to private school. Boarding schools, you go away for 3 months and then you come back again. I think it's also known as your parents don't love you. So when I left school, it was a case of all my friends just went, we all lived around the country and all conglomerated at one school. So really, when I changed, I was on my own again. I got a new job. Okay. I was in a new environment. We'd moved into a new house. So it kind of played into my hands. Like I didn't really have any of these kind of social conflicts at all, or these issues, because I just found friend groups because I'd moved anyway, and they saw me as the person that I was right there and then. And I was kind of already on my journey anyway, so it wasn't really a problem. But I think, I've met up with various friends since, school reunions that you go to, that kind of thing, and there's this big kind of like, wow, you've really changed. Like all that stuff that you said you're going to do, you did it. You're hustling, you're doing it. And you can see that they almost feel bad because they've stood there and they're like, oh my God, I never believed in that guy. Like, I never thought he was going to do it. And that was the same with my weight and business, being self-employed. People think you're not going to make it and not going to be able to do it, think you're crazy and stuff. So it's kind of satisfying.
Yeah.
But, to breach the topic of how do we help people with this kind of scenario, like you said, you've got to tackle it head on. And one of the things that people need to do is find a reason to stand up for their own beliefs and their own confidence. So when people say, oh my God, why are you eating a salad, man? You're like, do you know what? I want to eat it because it makes me feel really good and it's making me leaner, and actually stand by your reasons rather than going, oh, well, I'm trying to lose a little bit of weight. If you're bold, people will see that, they'll respect it, and they'll be like, wow, he really believes in this stuff. Like he owns it. So I think you've got to own your change.
Yeah.
You can't not own it. You've got to believe in why you've kind of done it. And that's why I always encourage people to engage in exercise that they enjoy rather than just going to the gym and run or something, because you end up being, I think sport breeds a great level of community.
Yes.
You have a group of friends that are kind of slightly performance and health minded. I think that's really healthy for people to have.
That's a really good point. Lots of good points, actually. But when you do have a sport or a particular activity that you're known for doing, you're not just someone who like exercises or someone who works out. You're someone who plays rugby, or you're someone who like does Zumba or jazzercise, right? And that's like kind of fun. Or like I do Krav Maga, which is self-defense, but it's a particular kind of self-defense with its own community within it. And I think that is something when you talk about social support, if people are struggling and you find that you're in that point of conflict, of friction at the beginning, that can be an awesome time to join up with one of those groups, because all of a sudden you're put in the same room with a bunch of lunatics who are super passionate about what they're doing, whether it's rugby or CrossFit or whatever. And so that can be a really cool way to do it.
I think that's one reason why CrossFit has been so successful, because people that have never really been into sport or never really kind of found a proper identity have all of a sudden gone along to this gym. Mm-hmm. They know they need to go to a gym. They know that they need to work out to be in better shape. And all of a sudden, CrossFit's gone, do you know what? We can work hard, but we can also have fun and go out for dinner and bake together and have, mum mornings where we come in and train with our kids. And, it's given people an identity. And it's funny because you usually know when someone does CrossFit, because that's all they can talk about. Yeah. CrossFit this, CrossFit that. But it's a good thing because people are passionate about this change. They've got a reason for change.
Yeah.
And, I respect that 100%, big time.
And then I would love to, we're actually coming up on time, I can't believe it, but I would love to talk about some of the differences that you might find between the United States or the UK. I know I have a lot of people in both places who are listening. Can you talk about maybe some of the things that the UK is doing right and ahead of the US in?
I think it's hard without going to the US and experiencing it.
Yeah.
To be honest. I think the model of kind of fitness is very different in the US because the US has got tons of money in sport, even at the youth level. You look at the colleges over there and you've got stadiums and stuff. Sport in the UK is just always on a shoestring.